Species. Unite.
You walk through a forest, every leaf on every tree is unique. And that's what biology does. We are all unique, right? Everything about us that biology does, it's so magical, it's so special. And we now have the ability to harness biology in the way that nature does.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Novogratz. This is Species Unite. I just spent a few days at London's Biofab Fair, which was a showcase and a celebration of biology-based technologies. These weren't the usual alternatives to leather or plastic. Imagine a world where textiles aren't manufactured from fossil fuels, animal skins, or even plants in fields, but grown from microbes, mycelium, algae, and engineered proteins. There were fabrics brewed in vats, color grown by living microbes, perfumes made with the DNA of extinct flowers, and leather-like sheets made from banana waste and mycelium. Each innovation not only reimagines what we wear and use, but also reshapes how we think about design, beauty, and even culture. At the heart of this movement is Suzanne Lee. She's the founder of Biofabricate. And for more than 2 decades, she's been bringing together a global community of scientists, designers, artists, and dreamers to show us that biology isn't just inspiration. It's the next frontier of design. Here I am with Suzanne Lee, the founder of Biofabricate. We were at the Biofab Fair in London for the past 2 days, and now a very tired but very happy Suzanne is sitting across from me. Hi, Suzanne.
Hi, Beth. I'm so happy that you came to London and joined us for it. Yeah, just very, very excited that you got to experience it.
You know, you were on the podcast, I think, about like a year and a half ago. And you said you should really come see. You planted that seed. And then I was like, I totally have to come see this in real life. And I am so happy that I did, because you can talk about this stuff all day long, but until you see it and you meet all these founders and these scientists and innovators, for people who are not in this space, and I'm not in this space, I'm just really excited about this space, a lot of it's a hard concept to really grasp. Mm-hmm. So before we even get into anything that happened in the last 2 days, will you just give us a brief history, just a brief history on you and, how all this kind of grew?
Wow. Okay. Well, for me, the journey started 25 years ago. And at that time, I was a fashion designer. I was writing a book about the future of fashion, but not really thinking about most of the fashion industry just focused on what are we wearing next season. And I grew up as a sci-fi fan, and I was always fascinated by how fashion was shown in science fiction. And so when it came to write the book, I was like, well, what are we going to be wearing in 50 years? Okay, how do you figure out what that's going to look like? And I came to the conclusion that you need to talk not to fashion designers, but to the people who were making the materials that the clothes would be made from, or the manufacturing processes that were going to be used. Because then you can start to imagine, okay, well, then that will translate to new forms, new functionalities. So anyway, in the course of that book, I went and interviewed a ton of scientists, and one of them was a biologist, and I hadn't thought about biology at all. And he was like, well, you don't need to get fibers from an animal or from a plant. It doesn't need to grow in a field. It could be from a microbe, a bacteria. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? And so for me, then I discovered that there were microorganisms that could produce materials and got introduced to how kombucha is brewed. And it turns out that one of the co-products when you ferment kombucha is this sheet of material that forms on the surface of the liquid. And I basically figured out that we could grow kombucha in kind of big bathtubs, and then it would create this big sheet of material, and that material is cellulose. And that's what cotton and a lot of, natural fibers are made from. So that was the journey. It was like, oh, that was a light bulb moment, really. It was like, hang on a minute. The fashion industry could brew fabrics. And then, as I got into it, realizing this saves on water, this saves on dyeing, this is biodegradable, and this is interesting. And even back then, sustainability, no one was really talking about it. Anyway, so I spent 10 years trying to tell everyone that this is the future. And that was a huge struggle. But through that, then I got my TED fellowship, moved to America, got a completely different kind of reaction to what I'd got in London. And then started to discover other people around the world who were also thinking, hey, we can do things like brew proteins modeled on spider silk to make fabric. Or we can use the mycelium that we find in fungi to make a fabric or a material. And so there was like a moment in time where I started to be aware of other kind of crazies like me, that were very outside of the existing fashion material system, but thinking about how do we use biotechnology to create yarns, dyes, materials that are grown in a lab, not in a field, not on an animal, not through petrochemicals. And I just thought it was the most exciting space. I stepped out of the fashion industry and was like, this is the important work, right? But we were very distributed around the world. It's like pockets of people. And when I moved to New York, I thought, if it would be amazing if you could put all those people together in one room and then invite the investors and the brands. We could really sort of demonstrate that this is a wave of innovation that's happening that they should pay attention to. And so Biofabricate started in 2014 to make that happen. And to be honest with you, I thought that was just going to be a one-off event. I was like, we did it. We got this fantastic space at Microsoft in Times Square. It was an awesome day. Everyone was super energized. And I was like, my job is done. Yay. And then everyone said, when's the next one? And it became an annual thing. So here we are. We're in London, 2025. And I think now it's recognizable that it is a new innovation space that is focused absolutely on a post-fossil economy. And we have people here from around the world, and they are brewing fabrics, growing color, fermenting, just like creating all kinds of dyes, fibers, leather alternatives, ingredients for beauty, you name it. And it's just such a positive, exciting space to be in.
So if you go back to 2014 to now, a lot has happened and a lot has changed already. And it's almost like this has all been a long infancy, right? Like this is brand new. It's still brand new.
It is.
But that was when it was like first born, pretty much. So what's changed from then until like this past couple of days?
I think the early founders of these material companies were pretty much all PhD scientists. They were grad students with a, really incredible vision, but no industry experience, no product experience. And, they were smart, they raised a lot of money, but they didn't really understand what to build. So they wasted a lot of money. And I think that first, so a lot of those first founders really didn't achieve what they set out to do. But meanwhile, another generation came along that were looking at that, thinking, wow, this is super interesting. And that next wave of founders contained quite a lot of people from the creative industries. So they were no longer science PhDs. They were designers who'd worked in the industry who wanted to fix something, who were like, we can do this better. We don't want to use plastic. We don't want to use animals. So the founders that have been kind of really emerging in the last 5 years, I think are more product focused. And that obviously is a really good thing.
Well, and you saw a lot of that this week where people have products, and there were products here and really beautiful stuff. And kind of every material that was here you really got to see what it actually is. You weren't seeing the idea of what it might be.
Yeah.
Which was very cool.
And what I would say, Beth, is like the early funding came into the space because of sustainability, right? It was promising, we're going to use less land, less water, less chemicals. That was the driver for investment in the early days. But, the world has changed. And unfortunately, sustainability is no longer a driver for a brand to adopt a material. It has to just be a desirable thing. It has to function. It needs to excite the customer beyond the fact that it's better for the planet, right? And that's a shift that we've seen. So it's more pragmatic now. And that's why we came to London during the London Design Festival, because we said, you know what, sustainability is not the story. The story is, what does biology mean for the future of our products? What does it mean for color? What does it mean for texture? How can it offer new opportunities for designers to make something that was never possible before?
This never existed, right?
It is literally a new world. I mean, you saw it, people like Polybiome, where they're brewing fabric and then they're using live color-producing microbes to color the fabric. This is so revolutionary. And the way that color is applied is like nothing you've seen before. It's like you would see it in the natural world.
Explain that a little more.
You walk through a forest, every leaf on every tree is unique. And that's what biology does. We are all unique, right? Everything about us that biology does, it's so magical, it's so special. And we now have the ability to harness biology in the way that nature does, but we are designing that biology to make what we want so we can brew fabric. So that kombucha process that I was pioneering 20 years ago, there were multiple companies in the room next door doing that same process. And now no one's calling them crazy. The very best brands in the world are prototyping handbags and shoes in that same material. But it's very much about timing. But what we wanted to communicate at this event was this changes how things are going to look and feel. I can't wait for brands like Ganni. Okay, this is a Scandinavian fashion brand, really at the forefront of wanting to adopt these materials. Their design team love the fact that every sheet of material they get from these innovators is different. They're not asking it to have the aesthetic of a petrochemical where it's just the same stuff over and over, right? Exact, you make a handbag from it and everyone has to be the same. What we need is for fashion designers and brands to say, what if instead of everything being identical, we offered everything completely unique, That's what excites me.
Which is so much better when you think about it, but it's also, you realize just how systems get so stuck.
Yeah.
That was forever, since the beginning of fashion, that was kind of the standard. Oh my God, every shoe has to be the exact same.
Mm-hmm.
And now,
what if it wasn't?
and no one really ever said that, right? They didn't really think about, well, no one I know ever really thought about that. And Polybion, who you mentioned, and Ganni, who you mentioned, are now have a product together that I saw yesterday, this little wallet. That's their first they're doing with them, I think, right?
Well, they're launching something, I think, in 26.
Okay.
But, what it takes is a real commitment on the part of a brand to go on a journey with these innovators and understand what is it that this material can do. If we're talking about wallets and bags and shoes, it is not leather. It's really nothing like animal leather. It might look like it, but really it has its own properties. So you have to understand, well, how does this manufacture? So that's the journey you need to go on. And so it also means that designers need to think, what does it lend itself to? How do we learn what this material wants to do? And I believe in the case of Ganni that they've created a new product just for that material. And that's the kind of commitment and thinking that we need, and it's super exciting.
I was thinking about this a lot in the past couple of days, how, and part of you as part of me, you kind of want to explain this to like the general public and let them really understand, like, this isn't leather, this isn't vegan leather, this isn't cactus leather, and all the things that are produced right now with plastics and all made to look like leather, right? This is its completely own thing. This is grown. And so on some level, it doesn't really matter if the general public really gets it or not, because they'll accept whatever becomes the next thing, right? It more matters what the brands think and who's using it and who's buying it. I had a dinner. I was with Upside Foods, Cultivated Meat. It was an Upside Foods dinner. And their CMO was there. And I was asking him about marketing with Cultivated Meat. And he said the best marketing for Cultivated Meat, honestly, is don't even talk about it. Just replace the meat. I mean, as exciting and as cool and all this stuff is, there is some, like, the brands start using it, people will just be like, wow, look at my bag, right? I mean, and hopefully they'll say it was grown and all the other stuff, but that's not nearly as important.
No, it's true. So one of the things that we did at this edition was we had something that was called the Bio Edit. And it was kind of like a museum exhibit, lots of little things under glass cases, a lot of which were beauty products. Because the reality is that actually beauty, personal care have adopted some of these bio-innovations before fashion has. So, for example, we had Lady Gaga's House mascara, and the Unseen had a mascara and an eyeliner. Lady Gaga's one was used with a brewed protein, a silk protein that's grown in the lab from bolt threads in California. So this is fully bio-designed, bio-manufactured ingredient for beauty that, because it's a natural protein, is really great for, conditioning and volume building, all the things that you want from mascara. But it's the Lady Gaga brand. That's what's selling it, right?
Well, same thing with K18. I used K18 and I had no idea. And I saw it here and I was
it's just a product that works.
I'm so ahead of my time. But I had no idea.
Yeah.
But I love it.
What else do we have? Perfume that uses the DNA of extinct flowers, right? Just at the end of the day, it's a beautiful scent and the story is amazing. But I think, there are companies out there who are just putting out great product, high functionality. The consumer loves it. And most people don't know it actually came from biotech or some sort of bio-based ingredient, the algae black, which replaces carbon black, super toxic petrochemical input, and now we can do it with algae. And it's going into things that, we're painting on our eyelashes. So I think it's helpful to just sort of show people a showcase of products that are in the market, they're in Sephora, you're wearing it, it is real and it's scaling. So,
but it is interesting. Like when I saw the K18 conditioner, which I've used for a couple of years, someone gave it to me and said, "You're going to love this stuff." And I was like, "Oh my God, it's amazing." But when I saw it here, I had no idea. And there is a lot of truth in that. Like, stories are incredible, and the storytelling around all of this is super important. So I'm not trying to say it's not, but for the general consumer who's just buying the most incredible thing, or if big luxury fashion is going to start using these types of materials, right? It's not that important that they tell everybody. It's more important that they use them.
Yes. And, we saw, I don't know if you saw Effea, which is one of the mycelium materials. If you put that in front of people, it just feels so much like suede. I don't think anyone in a blind test could really tell the difference. It's so soft and you just want to keep feeling it. So it's this desire is what makes us buy things. It has to be something that when you touch it, when you taste it, when you experience it, it gives you that sort of rush of, oh my God, that's amazing. It really works, or I really love the way it looks. And that's where design comes in. We have to make these things desirable.
Yeah.
And then, like you say, our work is done. People will buy it.
With Effea, how do they do that, first of all? Because I've never seen mycelium look like that. It's awesome.
I mean, it's very special what they have. It's many, many years of research. I think it also helps that they're based in Italy, right in the heart of the tanning, kind of industry. So they're pulling on all of those hundreds of years of tradition around leather and finishing to make a product that is super high quality, that is really recognized for its beauty, suppleness, touch, color intensity, all the things that, we are going to find desirable in a handbag. So using the best of the existing knowledge and craftsmanship that's out there, but growing it, sheets of mycelium, the root structure of mushrooms, to produce this material in sheets.
Another mycelium brand that was here is Holan, which they have a very cool story. They've been growing mushrooms for 27 years.
Okay.
And that was it. They were doing shiitake. They were doing like mushrooms to eat. And then a few years ago, they said, well, there's all this stuff happening with mycelium. What are we doing? We have all, look around. And so they started experimenting, and now they have a mycelium company, and they're making really cool stuff. So I just thought it was fantastic that this is happening in little pockets of the world, and it's spreading.
Yes,
it's definitely spreading.
That's exactly it. Another journalist asked me, what's new? And I was like, it's not necessarily a new technology that I can tell you about, but what I've really noticed is that these innovations started in the US, maybe a little bit in Europe, but this year we have people, like you say, from South Korea, from China, from India, Latin America. So things like growing color from microbes is happening around the world. Growing mycelium, it's happening around the world. And that is how we will collectively get to global impact. It can't just be a kind of a Western thing.
In India, there's a company called Banafi that is growing a leather-like material out of banana waste, like agricultural waste from bananas, which there is more banana agricultural waste in India than anywhere in the world, I learned from them. So people are also looking at what is right in front of them and what are the issues in their own countries or their own backyards. And they're solving multiple issues at one time doing this. They see a problem and a solution, and that is what's happening too, I think. That people aren't going way out of the box in terms of where they live and their communities.
I think also, you mentioned community, but I feel like that's a female-founded enterprise, and it's giving work to a female workforce there too, right? Yeah. So multiple levels of not only is the material good and using up waste and solving a sort of ecosystem problem locally, but it's also giving work to women and obviously, helping in their independence too. So, yeah.
I know it's still, not quite more than a baby, this whole industry, but you feel like as this grows, just the problems it will solve not just the obvious problems of we need to replace animal leather and we need to replace plastic and we need to replace all this crap that's ruining the world. Those are the obvious problems, but it's solving so many other problems. There's so many things it can fix. That's the kind of stuff I learned this week that I didn't really think about before coming and seeing all this in person. And so many of these companies, I would say, how long have you been around? 3 years, 4 years. They're new. They are the next gen of this world.
Yeah, totally. I don't know if you met the guys from Arda.
Yeah.
And like working with AB InBev, some of the world's biggest drink producers, to take the spent grain from beer or whiskey or whatever it may be, and then turning that into a material. So these kind of like corporate partnerships, strategic partnerships, I think that is also exciting because you're helping to solve their waste problem, but locally where their manufacturing is situated, and then, transforming their waste into something of value.
And some of these things, like the guy, it's called how they turn paper into leather kind of blew me away. Or not leather, but leather-like. And they emboss and make ostrich and crocodile.
I had to persuade them to come.
You did?
They reached out to me, yeah, and they were like, oh, we're just curious if you can like promote our material. I don't know how they heard about us, like all the way in, somewhere in China.
They're in Hong Kong. Or they're based
they're in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Okay. They sent me a deck and it was not good. And they were like, the way they were pitching it, the positioning was wrong, but they were asking for introductions to the very best luxury brands in the world. And I said, well, I can do those introductions for you, but you need to change the way you're talking about this, And then I said, but really, you should come to the Biofab Fair because they're going to be in the room and then they can physically experience it. This is an industry based on touch. You have to experience it. You can't do it over a Zoom call from China. And so, it took quite a bit of persuading. And then eventually they said, okay, we're going to come.
It's good they did because they had some serious brands asking them about making watch boxes. They got a lot of attention.
I know. And he said to me, I'm so grateful that we came. I was like, I told you, just come because, Louis Vuitton, Hermes, Chanel, Ralph Lauren, they're all here.
Yeah. And they all want to use this stuff, right? They want this to work and they want to work with it. And they're impatient, I would imagine. And this is a baby industry. So how does that work?
What, with the luxury?
Yeah, like I'm sure they
guys
have been wanting this stuff for a long time.
I think the luxury industry is in crisis. There is a need to redefine what luxury means as we go forward. And I think one of the keys to that, for sure, is innovation and exciting your customers by finding something new. Well, we have a room full of new here. But to be fair, the caring group, brands like Balenciaga have been embracing this field for a number of years. So they've been interacting with these innovators for quite some time. They recognize that this is the future and they're trying to find ways to bring these things to market. But luxury has very high quality standards, high expectations, and they're a little risk averse. Understandably, they have, they have something to protect in terms of reputation. And so they're not going to adopt it unless they're convinced that it has the durability, and is really going to appeal to their existing customers. But they're here for the long term. It's not like some of the fashion brands which just want a quick marketing story, right? Luxury has been coming to Biofabricate summits for years, and they take it very seriously. They do a lot of education to their own internal teams. They're bringing their expertise to the table because they want these innovators to succeed. So, that's great. And we need that.
Well, and I would imagine part of it too is fashion in general, but luxury has had a very bad reputation for what they've done to the planet, like everything else, right? And so to start reversing that it's got to be somewhere on their list of importance.
I mean, I think one of the things that people don't understand is this is true of any area of innovation, is that when you invent a new technology and you get it to market, it's always expensive in the beginning because just the economies of scale, right? You're producing small quantities, so the price is high. As you can grow the volume, the price will come down and it will reach everyone. But at the moment, with bioinnovation, most of the products in this space, there is a premium on it because they're only producing at small scale. Now, I get why, we have so many really passionate, young, sustainability-minded fashion brands that are like, oh, they're only working the luxury guys. Like, we can't get it or we can't afford it. And I get that frustration, but it's going to take time. And the reality is luxury can afford it. They will be the ones to drive it. And it's not a bad thing because that also positions these materials as having real high value perception.
Sure.
So we need to really start at that level. And then, like I say, over time, as they scale, hopefully it reaches products that, are mainstream high street brands.
And they are more expensive. I asked a lot of people price. They are definitely more expensive than like a leather, fast fashion for sure. They're up there with luxury. They're not like crazy expensive in terms of, they're not more expensive than luxury. Their prices are high, but they're not impossible, which I think, like I always go back to, because my other favorite world is cultivated meat and all these things happening in the food space. And how crazy high that stuff was. What, like $300,000 for a meatball, 15 years ago. And now it's going to like high-end restaurant prices, right? Like this stuff, like you said, it comes down.
Yeah.
And it makes sense that you want the best of the best using it first. And also everybody wants, whether or not you ever wear luxury or touch luxury, everybody wants a version of it.
But also, like, we're talking about sort of some of the leather alternative materials, but what we also had in that bioedit was one of the tops, like a blouse from H&M, which was from the summer collection 2025, and it was a collaboration with a textile innovator who is basically making yarn from seaweed, and that is at the H&M price point. So they're blending that seaweed yarn with cotton to improve the environmental footprint. It's beautiful, soft, great design, and that's affordable by anyone that shops at H&M. Yeah. So, even within this world, we have different levels of where the innovation is being introduced, and by blending it with another fiber, you get the price down.
I want to talk to you about language and vocabulary. I don't know how this happens, but at some point, do these materials need their own names? Like, is there confusion when you say alternative leather but there's a lot of leathers being grown right now. I don't want to call them leathers.
I know, this is the problem, isn't it? This is the problem. We don't have the words.
Right. And are the words coming? Are people talking about it?
I do think this is really important because when we refer to leather is very specific. And legally, you can't call anything that is not the hide of an animal leather. So you have to find another word for it. But also, just fundamentally, the material's nothing like leather. It might mimic it to look at, but if you look at it structurally, compositionally, it's not. So one of the sessions we had here was around storytelling and narrative, and that really was to sort of dig into that a little bit. And we heard from Efea, right? Efea are launching their brand here at the Biofab Fair. They want people to call it Efea. I don't know whether you talked to Maurizio, but if you look at the word Efea, it's kind of a mashup of hyphae, which is the kind of the nodes, the threads that spin this mycelial material. So it's referring to the biology. But, they're adopting that ingredient brand approach in the same way that most of us would would have heard of Gore-Tex, right? It's a branded material. We just call it Gore-Tex, right? Gore-Tex is Gore-Tex. And I think that's where people are aspiring to get to, so that when you go into a store, you say, do you have any Gore-Tex jackets, or do you have anything made from a fair?
Right. Okay. From 2014 till now, you've seen like huge changes. What do you think the next stage is for this entire world of these materials?
Well, I think it's like we were talking about earlier, the next 5 years, I hope we're going to see more materials on the market. And I really hope they don't try and just mimic what's gone before. We have a slide in one of our presentations that is about 5 samples of leather alternative, and they're all black, and they're all embossed with like a calf grain. And that's because that's the leather that the fashion industry uses most of. And yet one is grown by bacteria, one is grown from mycelium, one has been brewed from a protein in the lab. They're all completely different materials. And it just bemuses me why you would want to make something that essentially came from the forest floor and make it look like a cow. That's surely the definition of insanity. So I'm excited for the brave designers and brands who go, it's fungi. So and it has this unique characteristic in its texture or the way it grows color. And instead of masking that, hiding it and trying to make it pretend to be something it isn't, embracing the biological beauty of that and saying, how do we enhance it? How do we even, bring out that natural beauty? So I'm excited to see products on the shelves that we've never seen the like of before. That for me is like, our job is done.
I am too. I'm so excited. Suzanne, thank you so much for having me these past couple of days, for introducing me to this whole world. You've changed my whole life. So thank you. And by the way, before I stop, that is what so many people here in the past couple of days said. Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you, Suzanne. Suzanne introduced me. You really are the hub of this world. And
well,
I hope you're proud. Yeah,
thank
I'm sure
you.
You're proud.
No, I mean, it's a whole team effort. Amy, my partner in crime here, is also, we are driven by sort of passion and love for this space, and really wanting to give people a platform so that it can succeed, because we really need this to happen.
To learn more about Suzanne, Biofabricate, and the brands that we mentioned in this episode, go to our website, speciesunite.com. We will have links to everything. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Species Unite. If you have a spare moment and could do us a favor, please subscribe, rate, review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. It really helps people find the show. I would like to thank everyone at Species Unite, including Gary Knudsen, Caitlin Pierce, Amy Jones, Paul Healy, Santina Polke-Link, Hannah Gabrielson, Bethany Jones, and Anna Kollner, who wrote and performed today's music. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful day.